Good evening from South Africa. I know on your part of the world, it is not even lunch yet. We are now running towards 7 p.m. Past 6 p.m. Anyway, the name is Aziza Modise, researcher at the Africa Center for Evidence. I'm not alone, so I'm going to be talking with you and not at you with my partner in crime. And I'm giving her time to introduce herself.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Chisoro, and I'm a program officer at the Africa Center for Evidence. As Aziza said, I'm her partner in crime. So I'm really looking forward to this presentation because I see a lot of overlaps from what the other people are talking about with the unlearning and relearning. So just listen and let's hope you enjoy the presentation. Thank you.
And just to add to what Charity is saying, I am aware of time, but listening to you guys, I reflected on something that happened to me exactly yesterday about the Global South and the Global North. So we have the new intake of the learning community. And so this was our first week in the session. One of the people that is part comes from the Global North. And so we have a nice introductory thing, we talk, and at the end, she sends me an email and she says to me, I want to know a breakdown of everything that is going to happen in the next, it's a 14-week course, in the next 14 weeks, because I want to know if there will be any impact or improvement to my knowledge. And, if one is not aware, one could get very, offended. And it's quite interesting to now come across people that are, introspective, that are self-reflecting, that are saying, we do have these kinds of issues. But of course, I was not impolite, but it was very, very, it was glaring that someone would feel that an entire master's level course could not impact anything that they know. But anyway, let us now continue. As Charity has said, we come from the Africa Center for Evidence. Can we have the second slide, please? And this is now the overview of what we're going to be talking about. Just thinking about decolonizing the teaching status quo. And the word teaching, we're very, very, very aware of in the course. And you will hear the breakdown as we continue. The second thing that we're going to give you a breakdown, a little bit of a breakdown of the learning vehicle, which of course for us is the course itself, a little bit for you to understand where we're coming from. Then we're going to talk about the approach and then give you an example and our experiences of the learning activities, the Nongrading approach that we are using, and the relationship building before we conclude. Next slide, please. And just before we go into this nice, interesting picture, I want to tell you also that the people that are speaking to you is not facilitators alone and learners alone. This is a combination of a facilitator as well as one of the learning community members. We do not use student, and I think for the those connotations of decentralizing the power within a learning space. Anyway, so it's going to be interesting for you to hear from both of us. And so what our slide is talking about here is, before we talk about decoloniality, I think one should actually think about, I'm taking you a few steps backwards for us to consider what is coloniality. Nelson Maldonado Torres said that it's the invisible power structure that sustains colonial relations of exploitation and domination long after the end of direct colonialism. And such power structure define many things, including knowledge production and how we view ourselves as being. So decoloniality is about breaking such power structures. And that also, of course, will include your knowledge sharing and sharing this knowledge through teaching and learning. The perspectives of Maldonado Torres, that name, it gets stuck in my tongue, apologies, but also a little bit nervous, or maybe a lot bit nervous. But it's interesting actually, because this teaching, learning through the idea of teaching and learning together, his perspective is based on the elements of power, knowledge, and being in this power. So in this paper, what we want to focus on is how did we do this? How did we do the training? And how do we decolonize the mind, understanding, knowledge, thoughts, and teaching of development studies by considering the elements of power, knowledge, and being. So the power refers to the process of decolonizing the expert, and as well as we need to understand the learner and teaching. And so in understanding the learner is about how do we use in a collective. So in our group, in our learning space, we are together and we create meaning collectively. So meaning making is done collectively rather than the teacher having power over. So there needs to be a shift towards power with, so power with the learners. And you know, it's easy to say all of these things, but in practice, by the way, this was also like a pilot, but we will talk about that a little later. In practice, it's very different. But this will speak now on how do we do teaching in development studies, and this regarding decolonizing knowledge. So it's about what the teaching is about. In other words, the content of development studies. For instance, what readings are prescribed, whose context and experiences are reflected in the reading, who are the authors of the reading. And someone in this morning session mentioned something about who creates this knowledge and what knowledge do we access. You know, every time you open a book, not every time, but most of the time you open stuff is written from the global north. Does it mean, because I come from a background of storytelling, my culture is that we transfer knowledge by narration, and so it's not written anyway. Does it mean because I don't have those many references, is my knowledge completely different from the knowledge of other people? And overall then, a lot of unlearning has to happen. A lot of relearning has to happen, and not just for the learners. In academia, normal, what we are used to, we stand in front of people and we talk at what we call a student. And at the end, we want to assess and say, you have passed and you have not passed, and you didn't understand what I said, so you get 2%, and you understood, so you get 100% without any understanding of the experience of a person. Ngugi Thiong is talking about decoloniality as a project, not of replacing or rejecting, but of defining clearly what the center is. And what is the center? And we need to keep coming back on decentering and recentering, and who should be the center of knowledge. Where should the knowledge be coming from? And we want to do this in, we piloted it in the last part of last year at the Africa Center for Evidence. So in this presentation, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be unpacking decolonizing power, knowledge, and being. And we're going to use the short learning program, which is what I'm going to now tell you a little bit about. Next slide, that talks about our vehicle and why I'm calling it the vehicle. So our short learning program, as I said, it was in the last, we piloted it at the Center for Evidence. And this Center for Evidence is based at the University of Johannesburg in South Africa. So this pilot program is on the principles, processes, and practices of evidence-informed decision-making. The field of EIDM is one of the recent areas in development studies, and it focused on enhancing decision-making by drawing on evidence for more efficient, effective, equitable, and transparent development outcomes in this field, enhancing relationships. And this is key in strengthening the evidence ecosystem. So we are in the evidence ecosystem. And so it was very crucial in this short learning program to not only focus on content and knowledge, but skills, and very, very, very importantly, and it worked so wonderfully last year. And even this year, we had the first group and the first session this week. It was quite amazing. But in any case, valuing relationships, and how do we develop these relationships and continue these relationships long after the 14 weeks. Generally, you meet your students, you do your course, after the semester, people are gone, and you are left with one or two people that you have a relationship with, that you have created. And what has happened with this one is that more than 80% we're still engaging with after almost 6 months. So what is the purpose of this learning program? It's to prepare mid-level and higher government officials, practitioners, and researchers in any sector to apply evidence-informed decision-making to the challenges faced by those living and working in Africa. The short learning program's social learning approach encourages engagement with content, facilitators, co-participants to make sense and meaning together. And then when we are done, what you would then say someone has passed because they were assessed, you will say how, not everybody of course, but you will see how we worked it out completely differently. And so we were informed by the social learning approach. Please, if you could take us to the next slide. So that's the approach that we used. I'm not going to talk a lot on the approach itself, and I will invite Charity to touch a little bit on it. But just to, when you look at that slide you are looking at, so where do we start? We start out generally by working with structured education, but with how we work, suddenly, immediately, people are now starting to form learning communities. They are engaging with each other. We have spaces for them to talk on their own. It's just this happy, excited time all the time. And I want for Charity to give you a little bit of a sense of how she experienced as a learner when she walked in and she's told, all right, this is a social learning approach, what her experience was.
Okay, thank you, Aziza. Thank you, everyone. So I'll just briefly talk about what this social learning approach is. So it's just basically an approach which helps individuals to navigate uncertainty. And this is done by, being agile, and you learn by doing, and you also learn by doing things together. So basically, as a learner in this SLP course, when I first heard about social learning approach, then I'm like, huh? Like, you know, with me, it was very different because that's not what we are used to being in school and university, because we expect the lecturer to tell us things, but there we were told that you actually come in with some knowledge. So it was quite exciting that they could actually acknowledge that everyone has something. We're not a blank slate. So that's what I appreciate the most about this social learning approach, because we could learn together and also learn from experiences from other people, because the other individuals were from different organizations and had different experiences in the evidence-informed decision-making space. So it was quite interesting that we could learn together and there was no pressure that, oh, I don't know, that's the wrong answer. So it was really a safe space, if I can put it that way. So I think we can move on to the next slide.
So I want to continue a little bit from where Charity has stopped and say, you know, as one of the facilitators, the idea of decentering. You know, when you think about a lecturer, you know, the old-fashioned thought about someone standing in front of us. In my mind, it was like, okay, now I'm not going to have to stand in front of people, even though I've had a lot of experience in training. I've had a lot of experience in facilitating discussions and groups and workshops and all of that. But this time around, so here's me, I march inside. And as I march in, I'm thinking, okay, the knowledge that I have is that I don't have to lecture anyone. The extent of my knowledge and experience on the particular subject is not going to be in display. And, you know, we've done away with that gray-haired man who's very clever and very complete and so completely unapproachable. So I walk in there with this idea. Immediately, because last year we were like piloting, you get stuck. You get stuck because you want to push, you want to do this, and you always have to step back a little bit. And so the first thing that I had to change my mind about was that I'm not here to teach. I'm not here to teach. I am here to learn from everybody in the space. And to be able to do that, we had to create a space where everybody is going to be comfortable. So the first thing that you do is, obviously, you do a pulse feel. You know, a lot of people were interested in what is this thing that we're going to be doing now. I came in here to learn about this, and now suddenly I'm told I'm going to be orienting, but there was a keen interest and also some curiosity and a sense of waiting to see. You know, you get that sense that people are waiting to see what's going to happen. But there was no objection, you know. That was the interesting thing, that we ended up with these people that had open minds. So, okay, that was a pulse feel when we started. Surprisingly, at the end, when we did a pulse feel again, everybody was actually looking forward to the next session. And I can tell you now that we had people, other than 2 people that stepped out because of personal reasons, we had people enthusiastic about coming in every week. And the very same people completed the entire, it was not a big group, of course, but it was interesting that people really wanted to enjoy it. Quickly again on this is how we also started from mutual understanding. If you want people to understand you, you need to also start from all of us understanding where we're going. So even the terms of engagement, we came up with it together. As much as we had developed something, we brought it into the space and people made input, and that was the terms that we all followed, including us as facilitators. So there was no classroom up.
Aziza, can I cut in here? Because we are at time. So I think we can extend the session for like 4 or 5 more minutes. But just wanted to let you know that time is running out.
Okay.
Okay, can I just quickly come in?
Yeah.
On the learning activities, just briefly. So from the point of a learner, like we had social annotation of readings. So that really helped us to learn together, because we had some readings that we had to do, then would annotate on Mendeley together. And then we also had, besides the synchronous sessions, we had asynchronous sessions. And then we also had smaller groups where we could meet and socialize. So that's my reflection as a learner. So we can move on to the next slide.
I think
can I just quickly start with this, Aziza? Okay, so for this course, it was a non-grading approach, in the sense that we didn't use for the summative assessment that we did at the end, which was an evidence use plan, we didn't get marks for it, like grades, but we got symbols. They'll say you got an A or a B, and then they'll give you like extensive feedback. And building up to the summative assessment, we had like weekly tasks that we had to do. So in those, you would get comments from the facilitators. But what was also great was that we also had a lot of peer feedback. So I found that quite interesting, and we could learn from each other as peers, and not just from the facilitators, but we also got an opportunity to also provide feedback. So I found this approach really helpful, in the sense that I could learn more, because I didn't have pressure of like, this is like a competition or someone got a distinction and I didn't, but it was based on like commenting on what you have done. So I think this approach was really good, in the sense that it promoted learning. Thanks. Over to you, Aziza.
So with the non-grading approach, what I just wanted to add quickly was that there were no assessments except the last bit. And that was also another conscious thing that we were doing. There would be no judgment of whether you are capable or not capable. So it also worked out quite well. And Charity and I, in writing this, we had crazy debates about assessments and grading and non-grading. Hopefully, we will have time to talk to you about it another time. Next slide, please. I have talked a little bit about relationship building. It was very key in what we were doing. And I think Charity and I have become best friends as just an example of how the relationships have panned out. And we're looking forward to that part, because it's something we want to create a community of practice.
Okay,
Next.
just to add on to that, in terms of the community of practice, the idea behind this was, after we've done this course for 14 weeks, we could continue having conversations with our with the other fellow participants, which is working on well. So very soon we're going to be formalizing the community of practice. And I'm quite excited, because I'm not just part of this community of practice, but I'll also be coordinating. So it's really exciting. And this is also because I'm doing my PhD on communities of practice. So I'm getting like a lot of practice, and not just information from the book. So this is something that's exciting, that is something that can be done in practice, not just written in books. Okay, we move on to the next slide, where we'll be concluding.
Charity will conclude for us, but what I wanted to say to you about how well this has worked out for us is, I only have honors, by the way, and I'm facilitating learning that is happening with everybody. That is amazing for PhD people and professors and whoever. It's amazing. We will throw in our email addresses, so that you can get hold of us if you want to know more.
Okay, so just to conclude, so just basically we're talking about using decoloniality to use different ways of teaching in development studies. So we're looking at a case study of the social learning program that we did at the Africa Center for Evidence. So I think one thing that I'll just add in conclusion is that usually when you talk about decoloniality, the focus is on the what, which is the content. But with us, we actually went a step further and we tried to focus on the how by looking at other things besides the knowledge. We also looked at the whole being, the person, and also consider that we can use different ways of teaching to make sure that people learn more. So we, like, for example, with the Nongrading approach and also using the social learning approach. So yeah, so going forward, we're actually busy writing a paper on this. I think we just need to finalize. So just look out for the paper with more information and our reflections from the facilitator and the learner. Thank you so much for your time. I think you can just go on to the next slide. Thank you so much for listening, and let's hope you found this interesting and that you learned a thing or two. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. I mean, I can speak for myself and say I definitely found it interesting and engaging, and I loved your enthusiasm and energy. So thank you so much for sharing this with us. And I really look forward to seeing that paper when it's ready, and I hope you'll share it with all of us.